Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He's a good guy. I hope you let this go. Well, that is what President Trump said to the head of the FBI when he met with James Comey in February, according to a memorandum Comey kept for his file. Before he fired Comey for not dropping the Russian thing, he tried asking him to drop it personally. Well, this bombshell hit tonight. The New York Times has this story and NBC confirms it. President Trump tried to shut down the Federal Bureau of Investigation probe of then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and his conversations with the Russian ambassador. Not getting his way, Trump fired the FBI director. Again, that's the story out tonight. It's come on the tail of the news that Trump himself gave classified information to the Russian foreign minister and the Russian ambassador when they met in the Oval Office late last week. What do the American people make of this kind of news, that the president tried to get the FBI director to kill his investigation of Trump's top security advisor, then proceeded to fire the FBI director because of what Trump called the Russian thing? What do we think of a president who conducts his public presidency now in a two-step pattern of denial followed by defiance? If they can't get away with hiding the truth, they hunker down and defend what can no longer be denied. Well, first they denied firing Comey, for example, over Russia. Then the president admitted himself. Then the president denied having given classified material to the Russians, which turns out to be from the Israelis. And now he says he has the right to give any material he wants to anyone he wants to. And tonight, on top of all that, we find out, as I said, he tried to pressure Comey, the head of the FBI, then into dropping the Russian investigation. And then failing that effort, he fired Comey. We're in stage one now of the process this time. Here's the denial from the White House on cue. This is not a truthful or accurate portrayal of the conversation between the president and Mr. Comey. Well, we'll see, because it's on record by Comey. I'm joined now by NBC national security reporter Ken Delaney. We have a paper document, a memo written in contemporary time after the meeting with the president by the FBI director, who we have to assume is good at this, of keeping personal records and keeping them straight.
Guys, lights.
What can the president do now to deny that that document exists? Ken?
I don't think he can deny it, Chris. The document was written after an Oval Office meeting 2 weeks after that infamous dinner where Comey says President Trump asked him for loyalty. And the document is in possession of the FBI, so presumably Congress is going to request it if it hasn't already. And, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if this is obstruction of justice, but it certainly raises a question about how it is that a president can think it's okay to interfere with an FBI investigation. Now, I was told by a source close to Comey that he did not feel it necessary to resign at that moment and go public. He felt he could manage the situation, Chris. He wrote this memo to document the situation and kept this information from the rank and file FBI agents who were conducting the Russia investigation, so they didn't feel chilled. And by the way, Chris, this source tells me that Comey documented nearly every conversation he had with the president, either in person or on the phone. So there are other memos out there, and we can only wonder what they say, Chris.
What do you make of the interaction here? The president said a couple of days ago, be careful, in a tweet in the morning, I've got tapes. And now, however this story became uncovered, we'll know how the reporting tradecraft went, but the story came out that there's a written memo now to counter this tape. I don't personally believe there were any tapes, but what do you make of that? This sort of, if it was a bluff by Trump, are we going to have a battle between tapes and written memo, memoranda?
A friend of Comey's has told me that he'd be only too happy for there to have been tapes because he thinks they would vindicate his side of this, and that's why he wrote these memos. And by the way, he has a career of doing this, of memorializing controversial episodes for the record to make sure that his side is recorded contemporaneously. It's a powerful piece of evidence. And in this case, he's saying that the president suggested that they drop this investigation into the National Security Advisor.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you working with us. NBC's Ken Delaney. And as I said last week, President Trump delivered this warning. James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. But it might turn out to be Comey who has the most comprehensive accounting of those interactions. According to the Times, Mr. Comey created detailed memos, as Ken just said, about every phone call and meeting he had with the president. Wow. I'm joined now by the Washington Post's Greg Miller, who broke that news yesterday that President Trump shared classified information with the Russian foreign minister and ambassador. And Charlie Savage is a national security and legal reporter for the New York Times, an NBC News, MSNBC contributor, and author of Power Wars, The Relentless Rise of Presidential Authority and Secrecy. And, of course, USA Today's Heidi Presla is with us right now. A couple of questions. Let's start with the obvious ones. Let me go to Charlie on this question. What do we make of these the memorandum? Now we have a memorandum from in the hand of, dictated perhaps, typed perhaps on a word processor. Well, Craig, why don't we go to Craig on this? What do we make of that? How does it seems incontrovertible?
So I think that this is starting to look like, I mean, when Comey was fired by Trump, people were starting to whisper the words obstruction of justice. This just takes you so much closer. I mean, the idea that there are contemporaneous records sitting in a file that it presumably represent accurate recollections of the FBI director, who's seen as a highly credible figure here. How do you add that up against the credibility of a president in a White House that has had so much trouble keeping facts straight?
Heidi, it seems to me that the FBI director is responsible to the law, not to the president. He's not his lackey or his employee. He's got a 10-year term. He's meant to be independent of the president. That's why he gets a 10-year term, subject to cause perhaps, but he's supposed to be there and be a watchdog on all law breaking in the country, including that of the president. And let's face it, the FBI tracked down Nixon.
And that's something that Donald Trump either doesn't realize or is willfully violating. And this is the point now that I think this represents, which is that all of these iterations, Sally Yates's firing, the timing of Sally Yates's firing, the denials, all of these things, the public and even us in the media have been willing to say, okay, this just could be incompetence. This could just be being clumsy. Now, like Greg says, people are starting to whisper those words, obstruction. Was this intentional? Was this intentionally trying to stop the FBI director from pursuing an active investigation to put his thumb on him?
Well, Charlie, you pick up on here because we've all watched courtroom drama. I think it's the best drama there is besides boxing movies, courtroom drama. We all know about obstruction of justice. We know what it looks like. Here's a president who has a guy who knows a lot from his conversations with him, Michael Flynn. If there's been any conversations about Russia involving the president, they probably involved Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn's under serious heat from the government now. He's talked about getting immunity. Obviously, getting immunity means he wants to testify to somebody higher up than him. That would be the president. Of course, the president would then logically want to get the heat off Flynn so that he wouldn't be pressured into giving up the boss, meaning him. It does fit together. It wouldn't be a matter of compassion, whether he likes Flynn or not. He probably does like Flynn. There's Flynn dancing around him there. But the fact is that Flynn was very dangerous to him. And to go in January to the FBI, or February, to the FBI director and say, can you let my friend off? He's really letting off the guy that was going to rat on him.
Well, that's
the way it fits
you're
together.
Putting your finger on it there, Chris. I've talked to several former federal prosecutors or experts in white-collar criminal law over the last few days, starting with the Comey firing and leading up to this now, and who knows what may be next after this. But I've seen an evolution in their thinking, some of the smartest people on this topic. When Comey was fired, it was like, well, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. The problem with obstruction of justice is you have to prove that it was the specific intent of the person committing the act to impede the investigation. It's not just enough that they might know that might be a side consequence, so Trump could say, well, I just thought he was doing a bad job running the FBI in general, and so forth, and it would be sort of hard to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. But then you have the threatening tweet at Mr. Comey, and now you have apparently a written contemporaneous record of a conversation which, as one former prosecutor put it to me, looks like the president himself suggesting he had improper intent in terms of wanting to interfere with that investigation. Of course, all of this may just be theoretical. It's hard to envision the Trump Justice Department charging the sitting president.